shocks abound. As the surviving leaders jockey for position, no civilization is safe from being consumed by war's current, and tragedy lurks around every corner. Thankfully, humor ever graces this twisted tapestry, though it is a cruel humor. This is the Civilization Battle Royale X, Season 4, Episode 39, New World Nightmare. From the Everglades to Eastern Europe, the sky is clotted by the smoke of high explosives, and those acrid clouds quiver against death's haggard grin. Is this the future we made for ourselves? Thankfully not. It is Episode 39 of the CBR-X4. My name is G. Blazeman, and I'm taking a break from my role as the #1 Wagi apologist to instead bring to you an entirely unbiased and reasonable narration of this week's episode. Thanks for being here, and thanks to the team for putting me on. Without further ado, let's get into an episode that promises a lot of digital violence, intelligent plays, and hilarious moments that we will later struggle to recount to our loved ones, who will be charmed and bemused in equal measure. This week's installment of Orange Chrissy's excellent OC series highlights the importance of positive reinforcement when training the next generation in the art of war. As a Thule enjoyer, I relate to Idol Guangaito's look of genuine dread in the second panel. Now that Kenyo's murderous intent has awoken, who knows what he will do? It wouldn't be Seabricks without Sonic Fan 0511's weekly map. This week's cartographical offering reveals the extent of Iko Iki's gains in North America. I don't think any of us ever expected their gray-brown hue to grace the shores of the New World. It just goes to show that in the CBR, anything is possible, as long as it involves a degree of artificial imperialism. Let's take this moment to appreciate all the wonderful people who donate towards the Seabricks on Ko-Fi. If you're an avid reader and you haven't already, consider donating. It helps us purchase more parts for the sub's nuclear reactor and keeps us from plummeting into the briny deep. Our featured PR slide for the week is Saba, who tied with Thule as the biggest losers of episode 38. Still, I chose to highlight Makeda here because Thule were always going to get cooked eventually, whereas Saba actually had great prospects going into the season, with their powerful Golden Age boosting UA and a strong pattern of early settles. But in the Royale, you either use it or lose it, and in Makeda's case, her inability to score wins over her neighbors, who all ranked below her at one point or another, set the tone for a season of close calls and disappointing results. Kanem Bornu, Mogadishu, and now Sierra Leone have taken turns dunking on the beleaguered Civ, and it has seen them to the undesirable position of 26 of 31 as we head into this week's episode. We begin the episode with a haymaker of a DOW, as Vonya, warlord of the Selkups, shoots an arrow in the doorpost of Karlis Ulmanis of Latvia. For the Selkups, this is a logical step, as it builds on their westward expansion that started with Kazakhstan and continued through Kazan. While Latvia may be on par in terms of tech, the Selks boast a 2-to-1 advantage in production and manpower, which matters a lot in a war fought on flat, open ground. For Latvia, this is a make-or-break moment. They have never fought a Civ of the Selkups class, and could lose everything if they can't muster an adequate defense. Nevertheless, war brings opportunity, and Ulmanis is ever the shrewd leader. Perhaps he can guide his countrymen unscathed through this tumult. As the opening shots tear across the countryside, we see the Latvian cities of Orel, Ventspils, and Valmiera, all bombed to ribbons by Vonya's substantial air force, 114 planes strong on this slide alone. Well, this is a wild start. As the great KSI once said, "I'm in the thick of it, everybody knows." We turn to Isla de los Estados and find the mighty Emperor Puni making his last stand against New Holland's navy. Cooped up in the port city of Kolon Kura, the Emperor spends his days bemoaning the cold weather and ruminating on the circumstances that led him to this point. After the slow misery of the Wagi invasion, a quick death to Moritz hunters seems a mercy to him. It's certainly preferable to being rumped and having the good name of Bora spoken alongside the Visigoths. Puni shivers. This cylinder is so very cold. From the steady creep of frostbite to the blazing heat of battle, we see Sierra Leone's armies moving into Sabah de Emit's core. Thomas Peters moves without mercy in his quest for African unification, and seems intent on crushing Makeda's people against the shores of the Red Sea as he pushes inexorably towards his goal. Peace may be the only option left to Makeda, should she wish to remain in the game, but slaking Peter's thirst for blood may require a sacrifice that Saba's ruler is unwilling to make. For now, she fights on, her entrenched units around Adulus and Marib fighting furiously to keep their foe at bay. But there is hunger in the eyes of Peter's troops. They see Thomas' vision, and they won't stop until we see it too. A fresh round of DOWs hits the screen, most of which are aimed squarely at Kazan. While the Pharaohs are a terrifying foe, the real threat is Latvia, who, despite their war with Seljuks, still outrank Kazan in every metric. But there's a wrinkle. Latvia's armies are out of position, engaged in defending their borders from Vonya's horde. Conversely, Kazan's entire military has Alexandrovsk surrounded, and the former Makhnovian exclave is in the red. Could this backfire on Ulmanis? Up north, we see Latvian tanks trade shots with Seljuk anti-air units as their war kicks into high gear, while in the Kazan city of Bulgar, acclaimed folk artist Jeff Magnum, of Neutral Milk Hotel fame, proclaims Moshamadamin the king of carrot flowers. The people clap and wonder why this American guy is wailing over a musical saw. In Scandinavia, the Ume Sami grit their teeth. They've finally worked out how to click the declare war button, with their first target being Kazan. The only problem is, they don't share a border with Kazan. Who would have thought? Perhaps the Ume would be better served by declaring war on Latvia? After all, if the Seljuks are able to conquer Ume's southern neighbor, then that will leave the Sami trapped between the Pharaohs and the Selks. In other words, this Seljuk-Latvia war is the Ume Sami's last chance at relevancy. Will they capitalize on it? What do you think? A single tear graces my F key. It is with a heavy heart that I announce the death of Bora. Emperor Puni, his nose turned to the sky, is put to death by Johan Moritz, and Koyon Kira returns to the hands of a South American civ. In CBR history, few civs have captured the hearts of fans like Bora, a Pacific Island civ with a charming design, brought to life by Orange Chrissy's depiction of them as a mass of tiny island entities. Bora became an early favorite when they simultaneously forward-settled Rio Grande, Tehuelche, and Tiwanaku in Episode 3 by yeeting a city on South America. With that play, the concept of Bora Leaf came into focus, with fans urging Emperor Puni to go all the way and become the dominant power on the continent. However, if Bora was to live up to expectations, they would have to navigate a treacherous path. Premature wars against Rio Grande and Tehuelche endangered Bora's colony, and while they were busy competing in the New World, their Pacific homeland became a hyper-competitive theater, with Maguindanao, Zheng, Nungar, Palawa, and the much-maligned Wagi all gunning for the status of Pacific powerhouse. But Puni was undeterred. Episodes 9 through 12 saw the Emperor make gains in an early coalition against non-starter Rio Grande, consolidating their place in South America, while concurrently they constructed one of the Pacific's most fearsome fleets. Perhaps Bora's most dynamic moment was their initial declaration of war against Tiwanaku, and the simultaneous war that was fought against the Wagi in Episode 17. At that time, both Tiwanaku and Wagi were thought to be the stronger nations. Regardless, Puni held his own on both fronts, masterfully splitting his Pacific Navy and South American land units to ensure that he made no losses, and even gained the city of Caçapava do Sul from Tiwanaku. On the back of these wars, the number of Bora leaders skyrocketed, with popularity polls placing them number 1. Following these wars, Bora would enter an era of peace, consolidating their gains and filling in the home islands. And then in Episode 25, Puni showed his hand, joining a coalition with Ecuador and New Holland against Tiwanaku that would prove to be his shining moment. As the native South Americans struggled to push into Tiwanaku by land, Bora brought their naval and land units together in an offensive of epic proportions, one that wrenched Tiwanaku down from their high PR rank, whilst transforming Bora into the ascendant civ in South America. Any civ would have been proud of such a victory, but Puni was not yet done, and only an episode after the war with Tiwanaku had drawn to a close, Bora engaged the Tehuelche. By the end of the war, Tehuelche had vanished, and Bora received their highest PR rank yet, number 6. Not bad for a civ that was initially ranked number 37. That was Episode 31. Then in Episode 32, the worst possible thing came to pass. While Bora had been making their name in the South American campaigns, Their neighbor and rival had been growing into something fierce and terrible. The Wagi had become a technological superpower through their wars against Maguindanao, Zheng, and Siam, and were now the #1 civ, infamous for their utilization of peacekeeper tactics. Now, however, those units revealed their true colors, and they were not the use of pacifism, but the blood red of violence. The Wagi declared war on Bora, and a collective anguish overtook the community. The war, well, I don't think I'm the best person to analyze it. My bias is lying where they do. At this point in the game, any civ to become the focus of Bolim's wrath was surely doomed, and even the mighty Bora navy could only do so much against the clouds of helicopters, shoals of submarines, and waves of destroyers that were pouring out of Wagi. But I've got to give it to Puni. He fought a valiant defense, capitalizing on every flaw in his enemy's strategy. Wagi's unit management was painful and wasteful, and Puni fought tooth and nail to hang on to every single city that the Purple Wave assaulted. Even Palawa tried to get in on the action, but while Puni was down, he was not out, and his defense of his Antarctic colonies made a mockery of Palawa's limp-wristed attack. Nevertheless, no amount of boar leaf could save our heroes from the Wagi, dubbed a stage hazard by many commentators, and by episode 35, Puni had been expelled from his home in the Pacific Islands and relegated to his new world's second core. Even now, the embers of hope burned, and some wondered if Bora might still be able to compete as a South American civ once the war ended. Well, the war did end. By then, the Wagi had pushed Bora back to just a handful of settlements on the east coast of South America. It is there that Johan Moritz decided the Bora-Boran dream would come to an end, and it is there that Puni was eliminated in 30th place. Ain't no way I'm putting them below Shang. Bora was exciting. Their memes hilarious, their plays possessing an almost mystical quality. When the Wagi declared that fateful war, I celebrated, because I'm a Wagi fan. But as I draw to this eulogy's end, I feel deeply pained. Without their antics and choral stylings, the cylinder feels a colder place, a darker place. It is a place where our friend once fought valiantly. Now we must let him rest. F's for Bora, and Godspeed, you beautiful civ. The people of the Visigoths have taken to the streets, flying banners high and singing songs of revelry. Why, you ask? Because they have entered the Industrial Age. Very exciting stuff. I'm sure this dramatic forward leap in technology portends great things for Leovigild and company. However, if you plan on joining the celebration, please try to ignore the Faroese giant death robots that linger in the distance. Up in North America, we see the Osage making a push for the Senecan city of Kauto, which was nabbed from Yellowknives last episode. The Osage have the units they need to take the city, but the 2-tile gap between the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Taino border will surely slow down their progress. Terrain is saving Seneca's ass for now, and the Osage have no navy to circumvent it. For now, they push into the breach, knowing that every unit that makes it to Kauto's walls is time ticking down for the Senecan defense. Valmiera falls to the Selkups, and Vonya's forces push forward toward Jelgava, while further north her grip closes around the city of Orel on Kogluyev Island. It will fall to Latvia's sizable White Sea fleet to attempt a recapture, but they've got an uphill battle ahead of them, as Vonya is clearly committing to this campaign. Over to Goguryeo now, where Gwanggaito watches the launch of the Citadel Station, a powerful future-era wonder that provides +2 science from science specialists, +2 production from engineers, and +2 gold from both. This is yet another powerful boon for the #1 ranked civ. This wonder is a reference to System Shock, which I haven't played, but I've seen that scary computer lady. The idea of Goguryeo possessing such an entity is worrying indeed. In Africa, Adulis falls to Sierra Leone's armies, while Marib's health wallows in the black. It looks like Saba's collapsing quickly now, and though the terrain is favorable for a defensive posture, that alone won't keep Thomas Peters at bay. During a meeting with her military advisors in the capital of Azeba, Makeda Warlord is startled as a clangorous eruption shakes the military HQ. Her aides rush to assist her, but Makeda pushes them away and sucks air through her teeth. "Peters!" she hisses. "That arrogant swine is never satisfied." The warlord knows she needs an exit strategy, as Sierra Leone's troops have entered capital territory, but she has yet to formulate one that allows her to maintain her pride. In a David and Goliath type switch-up, Kazan have successfully wrested Alexandrovsk from the hands of Carlos Ulmanis. This is not good for Latvia, their hands already overflowing with Seljuk piss. While Latvia should be able to recapture Alexandrovsk, the Seljuks have an open path to Jelgava. All they have to do is start walking. In Alexandrovsk, a lone rifleman hovers a hand over his hip holster, as the sounds of great musician Ennio Morricone echo from a nearby radio. Morricone is best known for his compositional work on the Dollars trilogy of westerns, and before his passing in 2020, he scored over 400 films. Undoubtedly one of the GOAT composers. R.I.P. Back to the Sierra Leone-Saba War. Makeda has successfully retaken Adulis, but in the same breath, Sierra Leone's forces make headway towards capital territory by capturing Marib. As ever, Thomas Peters is throwing everything at this war, and the fractures in Makeda's defense are beginning to show. But one has to wonder if Peters wouldn't be better served by spending this time consolidating his North African gains. After all, his corps is looking mighty sparse. All it would take is a single DOW from Ndongo or the Faroes to put him on the back foot. And what of Mogadishu and Pontus? Both civs could stand to make major gains by attacking Saba right now, but it seems that neither civ is eager to throw themselves into this bum rush. Vonya's forces continue their push into Latvia as Jelgava falls. Carlos Ulmanis has ordered a significant naval contingent to recapture Ventspils, but a look southwest reveals a corps that is barren of units and ripe for the taking. Latvia's saving grace is the Seljuks' lack of melee units. Vonya can throw all the planes and rocket artillery she wants at this war, but she needs tanks if she hopes to capture and secure the Latvian corps. What's more, every step her units take into Europe is a step away from her border with Goguryeo. Meanwhile, Alexandrovsk has yet to be retaken by Latvia, as Kazani troops dig their heels in, refusing to be relegated to a rump state. This narrator loves an underdog story, and wishes nothing but success to Molshamadamin's troops. Recognizing how precarious his position has become, Carlos Ulmanis makes the smart decision of peacing out with Kazan, ceding Alexandrovsk in the process. This has been an excellent play on the part of Molshamadamin, who would have surely lost the city had he continued to oppose Latvia. Instead, he has regained much of the territory that was lost to Latvia's brutal Citadel campaign. However, this deal was necessary for Ulmanis, whose hands are full with trying to halt Vonya's wave-based assaults. Up north, his forces have managed to retake Jelgava. Now that he doesn't have to worry about Kazan, perhaps he will be able to commit the resources necessary to deny Vonya any further gains. To the Faroe Islands now, where Tronder's engineers have completed the Tokyo Skytree wonder. It sucks major ass, providing +4 happiness, +2 culture, and +3 gold, as well as +1 happiness and +1 culture per broadcast tower in the Faroese Empire. Perhaps Tronder is hoping to stock up on happiness, as his empire has historically lagged behind the other global powers when it comes to quality of life stats. Back to North America, where Pahuska's units continue to throw down their lives beneath the walls of Kauto. The Osage recognize Seneca as their final chance at making easy gains against a weaker neighbor, and will do anything to wrench Kauto from Cornplanter's weathered hands. Capturing the city would also open up an opportunity for a pincer assault on the Senecan Corps via Kauto and Petufik. For now, though, all Pahuska can do is send a few more infantry into the breach and pray this war doesn't aggravate any of the great powers that surround him. We get a look at the sea border between Sierra Leone and Ndongo. Time may prove this a war zone, as Thomas Peters' penchant for consecutive offensive campaigns suggests that Ndongo could be next to the chopping block after Saba. To alleviate this worry, Nzinga seeks a friendship with Akaicho of the Yellowknives, earning her some much-needed diplomatic capital. I doubt that this move would dissuade Peters, dogged as he is in pursuit of African unity, but perhaps it will help the people of Ndongo sleep a little easier at night. Bolim, my guy, my dog. Fresh off his conquest of Bora in South America, the Emperor continues ignoring his debt collectors. Instead, he spends his days sending massive fleets to glare menacingly at Nungar. Some may call it a waste of resources, but I call it peak strategy. These particular units seem to have been displaced by an expired open border agreement, but I hesitate to guess which one. Regardless, this flotilla is less a fighting force and more of a burden on Wagi's ever-expanding deficit. In Bavarian territory, we get a look at a new unit, Special Forces. It is alleged that this particular company of Faroese Special Forces is manned by former Grindadrop sailors who have decided to utilize their naval prowess for warmongering. Special Forces are skilled in embarked combat and can paradrop, making them ideal for island hopping and cross-continental campaigns. They could prove a major boon to the Faroes, who no doubt will be looking to make use of the Atlantic as a future avenue of attack. Never to be outdone, the Wagi have unveiled their own shock troopers, the Wagi Airborne Forces, ironically stationed within Faroese territory. Damn it, Bolim, get your own lands! Nevertheless, while the Wagi can celebrate this new addition to their military, they lack the crucial resource that would allow them to stock up on these units. Money. The unit icon looks cool though, so win for Bolim. Having ended their war with Kazan, the southernmost contingents of the Latvian army now move to reinforce Jelgava. However, the Selkups are preparing to redouble their offensive, and have stationed a substantial number of units around Valmiera and Cheboksary as they prepare for the next assault. Around Ventspils, the Latvian White Sea Fleet is trying everything in their power to snatch the city from the invaders, but thus far the Selkups have frustrated their efforts. Latvia are severely handicapped by the separation between their various naval fleets, which are spread across the White, Black, and Baltic Seas. However, the loss of Alexandrovsk has, in a way, helped the Latvian defense, as it has narrowed the corridor through which Vonya can advance her armies. Holding Jagabpils and Jelgava is crucial if Ulmanis wishes to exit this war with his empire still intact. It's a map! These things are the opiates of the 4X community, and it never ceases to amuse me how the in-game maps fail to capture the detail that Sonic Fan manages to capture every week, despite being a literal recreation of the data. A brief scan of this one shows us the extent of New Holland and Sierra Leone's gains over the last couple of episodes. They're looking buff. Meanwhile, Wagi's South American holdings look like a rash on the continent's rump, while Latvia are beginning to shrink as the Selkup invasion continues. Ooh, and now the sea border map. I particularly favor this map as it makes Wagi look a lot better. Actually, it makes them look like an oil spill across the Pacific. Not a great look, Bolim. This map also shows us that New Holland has roughly the same amount of land-sea territory as Yellowknives. The same goes for Mogadishu and Ndongo, while Sabah has experienced significant shrinkage. Someone needs to teach Makeda which clothes can and can't go in the machine. Alarms sound across Sabah de Emmet as Adulis falls to the Sierra Leone army. This leaves Sana'a entirely cut off from the rest of Makeda's territory, but its defensive position should keep the enemy at bay for now. Sabah has assembled a solid defensive line between Azeba and Aden, which they can safely resupply from Hamarwene and Tamna. It'll take a concerted push from Peters, should he wish to silence Makeda once and for all. If I was Abu Bakr ibn Umar of Mogadishu, I would be looking to declare war on Makeda ASAP. Never before has their greatest foe looked so vulnerable. There's a saying, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing twice, or something like that. For Trondur, this is a misquote to live by, as he builds his second wonder of the episode, the Utsade Gene Vault. Its boost, +2 science from nature preserves, +2 gold from geocenters, and +2 culture from eco-communes. It's middling at best. But by building wonders, the Pharaohs deny these buffs from falling into the hands of Goguryeo or Wagi, which could make a difference as we approach the endgame Total War. Legend has it that the Gene Vault contains some DNA thought lost to the cylinder, including that of the long-departed Shawnee. Trondur stares wistfully at the rows upon rows of refrigerated containers and prays that his own people are never relegated to such an inane existence. We turn now to the religion map, which offers us a unique diplomatic perspective on the cylinder. Notable religions include Ikko Ikki's Jodo Shinshu, which has been spread throughout Golgurt territory to become a foundational part of their alliance, and the former Alawite religion of Fatrug. which I suspect is contributing to the Visigoths' continued survival. Thomas Peters is less likely to invade Toledo, while its people worship a shared god. The Holy Wars mod has impacted this game in innumerable ways, from coalition wars to unlikely alliances, and it will be interesting to see if the community decides to keep using it in future seasons. Back to Saba de Emmet, where Trajan and Nzinga seek a piece of Makeda's ever-dwindling pie. The effects of Ndongo's DOW are felt immediately in Sana'a, which has been bombed to the red by Ndongo air brigades. Peters only needs to push forward a couple of tiles, and the city will be his. A glance across the rest of Makeda's territory reveals a similarly bleak situation. Her armies have thinned out dramatically since the last slide, and the concentration of Leonian infantry around Marib are a major cause for concern as Azeba languishes in the red. While Tamna looks to be fairly defensible, with Saba's Red Sea fleet on high alert, the rest of Saban territory is on the verge of being overrun. From the windows of her office, Makeda watches Peter's SAM units assemble on the hills around the capital, and scrabbles for an answer to this existential threat. She is a proud leader, and is unwilling to let her people catch a glimpse of her growing dismay. But she can deny it no longer. The fracture has grown to unmanageable proportions, and unless she seeks peace, it could portend the collapse of her once great empire. Ulmanis is not to be underestimated. His units have held fast at Jelgava, and as the bodies of their countrymen have piled around them, their fury has transformed into a concerted counteroffensive on Valmiera. Ventspils remains in Selkirk's hands, but it is clear now that Vonia won't have an easy time making further gains in Latvia. Perhaps the taiga-kissed warlord would have been better suited by an invasion of one of her weaker neighbors. Nevertheless, she fights on. Gambler's fallacy be damned. Well, folks, there it is. As the noose threatens to constrict Saba de Emmet, Makeda warlord throws down her hubris and makes peace with Thomas Peters, ceding Sana'a, Aden, and Hamarwena in the deal. This war has been an absolutely crushing defeat for Saba, once ranked as the #1 civ on the cylinder in the episode 18 power rankings, now reduced to a mere 2 cities, the capital of Azeba and the Arabian Peninsula city of Tamna. While for now the East African civ seems safe enough, due in no small part to the abundance of Wagi peacekeepers stationed upon the Saba-Pontus border, it seems that their chance at victory has well and truly slipped from their grasp. For Thomas Peters, this war further nails home his dominance on the continent, and opens a path into Mogadishu, should he wish to pursue a war with them. The Ascendant Leonians have been on a run as of late, but I think it wise that Thomas does not rush into the next conflict, and instead takes some time to reconsolidate his forces, catch up on some much-needed techs, and concoct a plan to defend against the pharaohs, should Trondor decide that he has grown weary of the aspiring African ruler. The Afshari DOW on Seneca gives us a chance to look at their core, or it would, if Dir Bolim hadn't designated all of their territory a troop parking lot. Bolim, dude, this is precisely why no one likes you. I still love you, though. Inundated as they are by Wagi units, it's hard to see where the Afsharids can go from here, which is unfortunate, considering the lengths they had to go to in attaining their current strength. Nevertheless, I commend Nader Shah on his air fleets. Clearly, this is a leader who understands the debilitating power of an aerial assault. As his war with the Osage drags on, Cornplanter is dismayed to find his inbox inundated with a number of spam emails. The erstwhile leader of Seneca is no stranger to DOWs, but a quick scan of this round reveals some disturbing news. Johan Moritz of New Holland has decided that he wants a slice of the Senecan pie. Uh-oh. While New Holland may not have a substantial force stationed in Nundawau, that single GDR threatens to cut a swath through Seneca's backline, cutting off reinforcements to Kauto, while the 10 planes stationed in the New Holland city will likely shred the Senecan walls, making Osage's work a whole lot easier. Still, Seneca has been known to surprise the audience when faced with overwhelming odds. Let's hope, for Cornplanter's sake, this is one of those times. To Zhang now, where the everlasting age of peace offers ample opportunities for theological philosophizing. Today, they have added a Reformation belief, which we'll take a look at in the next slide. But first, I'd like to draw your attention to the dozens of great generals at their disposal. Any other civ would have utilized these units to cut chunks from the territory of one of their neighbors, but Zheng's neighbors happen to be two global superpowers, and so the GGs remain dormant, ever waiting for their chance to strike. It's easy to count Zheng out at that point, and should the much-dreaded Gogurt or Wagi DOW ever hit the screen, their breaths will surely be numbered. But I think an avenue of hope still exists for Zheng, and it is that of the patient science turtle. One day the world will descend into total war. If Zheng can finish the tech tree before then, and if Goguryeo find themselves engaged by their more powerful neighbors, then Zheng may be offered an opportunity to sweep into the Gogurt core and make major gains. It's that or die slowly in the corner, and with a wallowing effective science of around 550, the Zheng better start getting comfortable. Here's the belief that Zheng picked up. Romanticism offers +2 culture and +1 science for great works, which is fine? Perhaps they can sway Guangaito into letting them win the game, through fine art and gifts of masonry. Disaster! The New Hollandese air units in Nundawao have decimated the Senecan military forces around Kaoto, creating an inroad for Osage forces to flip the city. Worse, Ganondagan has been bombed to zero, and may fall to those roving Osage troopers out of Petufik. Seneca has always had a knack for rebounding from an L, but this situation is looking dicey, even for Cornplanter. He has few units in reserve around Chenusio and Ganondagan, and his enemies clearly taste blood in the water. For now, Seneca's northern holdings look secure enough, provided Moritz doesn't send his sizable navy to come and lock them down. The situation illustrates the danger that great power exclaves pose to weaker civs. All it took was one New Holland city near their borders to make a mockery of the Senecan defense. Ulmanis drops deep, all his cities are red. I never sleep, 'cause citadels got rid of our beds. Beyond the walls of Alexandrovsk, life is defined. I think of yellow when I'm in the Kazan state of mind. Kazan has generated Nas, one of the greatest rappers of the 90s, and, in this narrator's opinion, ever. Perhaps it was his slick rhymes, vivid street imagery, and era-defining flows that gave Kazan the strength to wrench Alexandrovsk from Latvian hands. Up north, the Selkups are launching a huge attack on Jelgava, which Latvia looks ill-prepared to withstand. Daji can't be caged. Like a rabid fox, the princess gnashes her teeth against the wall of Gogurt that surrounds her, in a vain attempt to get at the throats of the Dzungars and the Kalmyks? Damn, Daji, what did they do to you? A nearby Singaporean machine gunner points and laughs. The funniest thing that could happen here is if the Dzungars bombed Xiaotun to the black and used a paratrooper to capture the city, but it probably won't. Rage on, Daji. Ah, Leonian North Africa. Isn't it a sight to behold? Actually, where the heck are Peter's reserves? Right now, it looks like a stiff Faroese breeze could blow Sierra Leone right back to the walls of Fez, and while Rome might have been severely handicapped in their previous war, I have no doubt that an attack could play havoc with Sierra Leone's plans for expansion. Senecans lament the loss of Ganondagan to the Osage, as Pahuska makes peace with Cornplanter. Seneca is now relegated to 3 cities, which are, for now, secure. I must give props to the Osage, who, despite being citadeled to high heaven by the Yellowknives, have managed to continue making gains in North America. Meanwhile, on the walls of Chenusio, a young Senecan conscript spies something odd in the Gulf of Maine. More to follow. Vonia increases the pressure against Latvia's eastern flank. Ulmanis' navy has vanished from the White Sea, leaving Yekabpils blockaded. The city looks set to fall in the coming turns, while Selkup descends on Jelgava in a bid to recapture it, although I still think Vonia could use a few more melee units in her army. Amidst the chaos, Soviet composer Dmitry Shostakovich composes a symphony that captures the fear and resilience of the Latvian people. He is a particularly thematic great person, as in real life, Shostakovich created his subversive musical works in Moscow, not a stone's throw from where Jelgava is located in-game. 2 turns later, and Latvian reinforcements rush to relieve the wallowing defense of Jelgava. Massive props to Ulmanis. From these slides, it's impossible to tell that he's fighting at a significant numerical disadvantage, ignoring, of course, Vonya's planes. It is crucial for Latvia that Jekabpils doesn't flip, as it's one of their higher pop cities. For now, it holds. As Warlord Makeda lounges on the balcony of her Azeba residence, swilling her whiskey and ruminating on the mistakes that have led her to this point, an image leaps unbidden into her mind. Abu Bakr ibn Umar, his face plastered with a wry grin as he lauds over her losses to Sierra Leone. That does it. It's one thing for Peters to ransack my lands, but Mogadishu can get stuffed. With that, she furiously begins typing a message to the Mogadishawi on her Faro Import smartphone. It reads, "I'm coming for Hajar," angry emoji. And indeed, this fresh DOW against Mogadishu looks like it could have legs. Ibn Umar's Arabian holdings aren't particularly defensible, and with Hajar in the black and tanks rolling towards the city, it seems that the warlord absolutely refuses to become a rump civ. I respect the gumption, but there's a small catch. The Sierra Leone border at Hamarwene leaves Sabin naval units trapped in the Red Sea, unable to join the war effort. Still, I admire Makeda's vigor. Well, this explains why Makeda feels so confident, as Palawa has also declared war on Mogadishu. However, Taranarera probably should have tabled this war, as the island city of Zahran is completely surrounded by Mog's army, and though Palawa sports more advanced troops, it doesn't mean much when there's 8 of them against the bulk of Mogadishu's fleet. Nevertheless, this war is an interesting development, and while Zahran will almost certainly fall, it'll be worth watching this space to see if Palawa sends a more sizable naval contingent to harass Mogadishu's borders. Also, is it just me, or are island battles like this just so cool? Maybe this is a Wagi-coded mindset. It's a Taino slide. Everybody say hi. Things are quiet in the Caribbean, and Aguebana seems content, as always, to while away his days doing chill island boy things, like generating a unique great general replacement in the form of Bohecho, a Taino general of history. The UU also begins an Areto, generating plus 25% culture and plus 1 faith on farms until it ends. Elsewhere in the slide, I spy a significant number of high-tech New Holland ships making their way north through Faroese territory. I'm sure this isn't a sign of something terrible. Turns out it was. An eerily powerful naval fleet has arrived to bring Seneca beneath New Holland's heel, and I don't really see how Cornplanter can dodge this warship-sized L. As if that wasn't enough, additional ground units are moving northeast out of Nundawau to ensure that Chinusio is secured as quickly and efficiently as possible. And Morit's open border agreement with Trondur means that even Kayasatoke isn't safe. Seneca is on the verge of leaving the game here. Somehow it saddens me. It's the government slides. I know nothing about this mod or about real-life political structures, but I see that Taino has been deemed a popular monarchy. Aguebana is no mere island boy. He is an island king, and is well loved for it. I am aware that a popular monarchy is a form of government. The Kalmyks being a monarchy in exile is just so perfect. Based on the number of Kalmyk units we've seen around the Mediterranean, it seems that Trondur has offered shelter to Ayuka Khan and his displaced peoples. That's sweet. The despotic nomadic horde of New Holland. Has Cornplanter been writing these slides in secret? Perhaps that's what he was doing when he should have been playing the game. Still, I suppose if you can't beat them, then dissing your enemies is a suitable alternative. I think Yellowknives being labeled the Earth Liberation Rally is a little disingenuous, as Akaicho is less concerned with environmentalism and more focused on liberating the souls of North American leaders from their bodies. The Yellowknife PR team is doing a lot of work. We see the tanks, Akaicho. This is the first of 7 slides showing us the spy capacity of each of our beloved civs. In a domination-only game, spies aren't the most useful, but they can steal techs and give sight on enemy cities, which is of middling usefulness. First up, we see that the Pharaohs have a bunch of agents, all led by Special Agent Nadod. My apologies to the Welsh. If it makes you feel any better, listen to everything else I've narrated here, and you'll see that I'm not picking on your language, I'm just not that good at pronouncing things. Goguryeo boasts their own special agent, Mr. Han. Every spy we've seen so far is based in one of their home country's cities. In other words, they are achieving diddly squat. Oh, I see that Goguryeo has in fact placed Recruit Kim in Tórshavn, where the Pharaohs have their own counter-spy, Recruit Sigmundur. Expect futuristic shootouts, high-speed fishing boat chases, and a bunch of PG-13 rated sex scenes. Ever the aggressor, Thomas Peters is using his spies to good effect, placing Recruit Perkins in the Singaporean city of Kalibangan and Agent Washington in the Palawan city of Mutawainat. The name cuts off. Still, shout out to Peters for actually using his resources effectively. That's the him difference, and Thomas continues to be him. Here we see that the Afsharids have a spy in Gogurian Gungnai, one Agent Ardashir. This is actually a pretty high-risk, high-reward play, as it could nab Nader Shah a bunch of undiscovered techs, but could also serve to piss Guangaito right off. I don't know about you, but when I play Civ 5 and find a spy in my city, the Civ that sends them goes right on the shit list. Goguryeo do have a spy in the city, but they're only of recruit rank, so this Afsharid play could have some legs. Here's the Wagi spies, and hey, why am I not on the list? Did Bolim not see the Wagi propaganda edit? That was a grade A international psyop. For all the work I put in. Anyway, Wagi has a spy in the Yellowknife city of Oraibi, but I'm too mad to name them. Meanwhile, the Yellowknives have a spy in the Wagi city of Ambang, Agent Joseph Suzy Drygees. That's an interesting handle. Perhaps this particular spy is moonlighting as a debonair woman of the night? Either way, Wagi does have a spy in Ambang, but I doubt Recruit Luluai has the chops to see through Suzy's disguise. Devious play from a Kaicho. While we were all distracted reading those slides, Makeda made some impressive gains against Mogadishu, capturing not only Hamar, but also using her air force and a single stray destroyer to take the island city of Safwan. I have to tip my hat to Makeda here. She's doing everything in her power to avoid being rumped. However, Mogadishu's forces are en route, and there's almost no chance that Sabah can keep these cities. Still, the population loss will hurt Mogadishu's science a bit, and that's the sort of spiteful play that we love to see. Unsurprisingly, Mogadishu retakes Hajar and liberates Safwan? Well, I'll be damned. Welcome back, Karmatians. This is a particularly silly liberation, as the Karm border will stop Moog from reinforcing their holdings on the Arabian Peninsula, leaving them wide open to Makeda's attacks. If any play could be described as wacky, zany, and goofy, then this is it. On Safwan, Abu Tahir al-Jannabi dusts himself off and looks across the sea to his lost Arabian holdings, now occupied by the very dogs that tore him to shreds. He is angered, but also grateful to breathe the sea air once again. As his advisors swarm him, amazed by his resurrection, a single phrase is uttered by the disgraced king. Karmbak 2.0 begins now. Senecan refugees pile into ferries across the St. Lawrence River, with most carrying only the clothes on their backs. These are the evacuees of Chenusio and Kingait, forced from their homes in the early hours of the morning as Moritz gunships fired salvo after salvo of heavy artillery into the urban zones. Both cities are now under New Holland's control, and there isn't a hope in hell for Cornplanter to retake them. The Senecan leader can be found boarding one of the boats to Kayasatoke, wearing the same haggard expression as his people. In Kayasatoke, an aging Senecan woman grabs the collar of one of the lingering Wagi peacekeepers. "Why won't you help us?" she wails, enraged by the soldier's lackadaisical expression. However, the soldier does not speak Seneca. Indeed, he doesn't even speak Danish, despite having spent the last 3 years in Faroese territory. He merely shrugs and indicates the refugee shelter in which the woman will spend the next few weeks, silently praying for salvation from Morit's iron wrath. Abu Tahir al-Janabi doesn't even get a moment to enjoy his miraculous rebirth, as he receives twin war declarations from Singapore and Rosvi? Maybe Changamire Dombo thinks he can take the as-yet undefended city, but he'll have to beat Singapore to the punch. Lee Kuan Yew's path to capturing Safwan is much clearer, provided the Wagi artillery flotilla moves out of the way. Meanwhile, the front line between Sabah and Mogadishu has remained stationary, but I wouldn't count out Makeda just yet. If I can say one thing for the warlord, it is that she really, really hates Mogadishu. We get a shot of the Dzungar Corps as Guldan Khan is next to complete the Manhattan Project. That's all well and good, but I'd fancy this Civ's chances a whole lot more if their carpet didn't look like a screenshot from Barbie's horse adventure. Nevertheless, the presence of the atomic bomb within Dzungar borders should dissuade their neighbors from declaring war, for now. In a blink, the Mogadishawi Navy wrenches Zahran from Palawa's hands. This will make up for some of the population lost in Arabia, and only time will tell if a larger Palawan fleet is coming to exact revenge on Ibn Umar's people. In the Zahran Zoo, a pair of Mogadishu sailors come across a strange being, a flightless bird with a thick plumage and a long, slender beak. "What is it?" asks the first sailor. "I don't know," his friend replies, "but I think we should call it an Eswatini." The Karmatians are immediately shoved back into the grave they just crawled out of, as Singapore takes Safwan, bringing an end to our collective dreams of a true Karmbek. Still, Ibn Umar can sleep soundly tonight, knowing that he gave his friend a brief second chance at life. F. Karms. More like L. Karms, am I right? Meanwhile, Hajar has flipped to Sabah, and it looks like Makeda has a good shot at securing it, along with Qatif, as the Singaporean border is blocking Mogadishu from reinforcing the peninsula. This has all worked out quite nicely for Makeda, if you ignore the whole losing 80% of her empire thing. As Morit's troops move in on Kayasutoke, we see that he has generated a great musician. Ala Raja was most notable for playing tabla alongside Ravi Shankar, and is credited with introducing the instrument to Western audiences. The Senecan refugees cower in fear as they hear the sound of rhythmically complex hand percussion emerging from the St. Lawrence's southern bank, while the Wagi peacekeepers do a little dance. Anything to break the monotony of sitting in this frozen hell. Wow, this is just plain disrespectful. Learning from his mistakes, Ibn Umar employs his necromantic arts again as he resurrects the Karmatians for a second time. Now he has summoned Abu Tahir al-Janabi in Hajar, right in the path of the oncoming Sabaean army. It seems that, for now, Qatif will remain out of Makeda's clutches, and Sabah Emet will be denied any gains in this last-ditch war against Mogadishu. None of al-Janabi's advisors were awaiting him upon his resurrection in Hajar. They had all been put to the sword by Lee Kuan Yew's death squads in Safwan. Never to be deterred, the ghostly leader took in the city's walls and proclaimed with all his vigor, "Karmbek, Mark III!" Back in Europe, the Seljuks have pushed through Latvia's defenses and taken Yekabpils, assembling a solid line of rocket artillery to dissuade any pushback. While I don't think the door has shut for Ulmanis just yet, things ain't looking hot for the Latvian leader. When last we checked in on the White Sea front line, Yekabpils seemed secure, but in such a grindfest war, the Civ with the greater production is always going to come out on top. But are the Seljuks really gaining that much? Don't get me wrong, I'm a Mark II Yakutia fan, and want nothing more than to see Vonya conquer Eurasia with fire and glory. But Oral, Ventspils, and Valmiera all seem to be stuck at one pop, and a one-pop city isn't much use to anybody. Perhaps it's because of the lands surrounding these cities that have been heavily ransacked during the efforts to capture them, or perhaps it is because they are tundra cities in revolt. Either way, it'll be a long time before Vonya can start reaping the rewards of this conquest. Gone are the days when the Taino were content with one slide per episode. They've stepped up and declared war on the Osage, immediately sending troops to capture Kauto. While I admire the balls that this must have taken on the part of Aguebana, The Osage are famous for their Pablometrics, and will bring that grit, heart, clutch, etc. to bear against their Caribbean foe. Pahuska's forces look well positioned to make the most of this war. A quick glance to the top of the screen reveals that Seneca still remains in the game. I suspect Cornplanter is scrambling for assets to leverage in a peace deal with New Holland, but at this point, what does he have to give? Only tears. Latvia has managed to retake Jekabpils, but that's all the good news I have to offer Karlis Ulmanis, as the Selkup lines move to secure Jelgava. A brief glance on the slide tells a sad tale. There are a lot more green units on screen than pastel red. The Latvian White Sea Fleet has been ground down to a sorry assortment of damaged vessels, and it won't be long before Vonya begins to encroach on the former territory of the Finns. The one saving grace for Latvia is that the Selkups seem to be working from the carrier spam playbook. I count no less than 41 of them on this slide, with only about half of them bearing any actual planes. I also don't see too many Selkup reinforcements in the eastern portion of the screenshot, so perhaps there is hope for Ulmanis, if he can weather this most vicious assault. The Taino should have thought twice about their DOW on the Osage, as Pahuska's forces are now swarming Kaoto. This is a great example of the importance closed borders can have in a war. When the Osage were trying to take Kaoto from Seneca, the Taino border massively reduced the number of troops they could bring to bear. Now Taino's Kaoto is set to fall, and Aguebana will have to construct a solid defense around Fernandina if he wishes to keep his mainland dreams alive. To boost morale, Memphis-based power pop band Big Star has arrived in the Bahamas. They are best known as the progenitors of alternative rock, which is no small claim to fame. I also want to note the strong Wagi presence in the former Mexican city of Monterrey. Even this tiny fragment of Bolim's forces could challenge New Holland's reign over South America, and really, they need to do so, as the Wagi risk throwing away their substantial mill score lead with each turn they remain inactive. Is it just me who didn't realize that Bukhara and Kazan were still at war? Nevertheless, we see an exceedingly common Bukhara W as they make peace with Kazan, gaining Bulgar in the negotiations. This is an excellent gain for King Shaybani, as Bulgar could act as a staging ground for a more concerted incursion into Kazan in the future. Bukhara once again proves that a civ's popularity isn't based on how big they are, but on how willing they are to actually play the game. Back to Torshavn, where the Pharaohs have built yet another wonder, the Cult Gamesla Data Haven. It provides +2 Great Scientist points and increases the yields of tundra and snow tiles worked in the city by +2 culture and +2 science, as well as offering +2 gold for each server hub in the Empire. This is a very fitting wonder for the Pharaohs to build, but maybe Trondur should have constructed it somewhere other than a 3-tile island. A mid-wonder utilized in a middling fashion. And now I must announce the death of Seneca, as Johan Moritz finally makes his way into Kayasatoke, putting every Senecan national to the sword as he goes, and finishing with the murder of dear Cornplanter. This is the second civ that New Holland has taken out of the game this episode, and the 5th overall. Moritz has no mercy for his enemies, and is the #1 civ killer in the game. Seneca were... well, I'll just quote Lehman from the Episode 5 Power Rankings. Seneca is washed. You know the story. Ranked #2 in the Part 0 Power Rankings, Seneca were expected to be the premier North American power, an autocratic behemoth that dominated test games. But when it came time for Cornplanter to step up in Seabrooks 4, the Senecan leader just kinda sat there. He sat there while the Osage menaced the lowlands and Great Lakes region. He settled Caughnawagas on the south coast, only to have it wrenched from his hands by the Osage. Seneca were passive, showing none of the vigor that the community had expected them to display. But you know what? They also had their moments. In Episode 13, they yoinked the city of Sandor away from the Pharaohs, at that time the #1 civ. And when the Pharaohs came knocking, they fought a surprisingly savvy defense, though the Pharaohs certainly could have tried a bit harder to take Kayasatoke. At one point, they were the victim of a coalition against the Crow, Yellowknives, Mexico, Osage, Pueblo, and the Tule. And while they did not emerge unscathed, they also didn't die. They held out. and in their many wars against the Osage, they always managed to hold their own, despite Osage's clear advantages. But at the end of the day, standing so inhumanly still that people mistake you for a forest is not a winning strategy, and it ill-prepared Seneca for the day a true threat rolled in. We all thought it would be the pharaohs who would show Cornplanter to his grave. After all, they had a grudge to bear against North America's most relaxed rump. Alas, it was not to be, and New Holland, a civ that lies on the opposite end to Seneca on the crash-out spectrum, decided that today was the day that Cornplanter would meet his end. To close, I will reiterate my words from the Part 35 power rankings. Seneca never stood a chance, but they danced. F. Seneca. Osage forces continue to push towards former Floridian territory, and while Kaoto is yet to fall, Taino's presence in North America is beginning to thin. Their navy is en route to try and hold back Pahuskar's horde. With a tactical application of their air force, they may keep their enemy at bay for a while longer. However, the Osage have the power of French house music on their side, and the pumping bass of Daft Punks all around the world drives each step of their war. All around the world is a lofty goal for Pahuska, one that I suspect will never be fulfilled. Sensing Leovigild's weakness, and really who doesn't, Bukhara and Bavaria DOW the Visigoths. This gives us an opportunity to take a look at Iberia, and golly, there's a lot of different unit colors. For one, check out the Wagi units stationed in Faroese territory. We know Bolim has no qualms in killing off weaklings. Perhaps Leovigild is next on the block? Kalmyx, Ndongo, New Holland, Mexico, Pontus. Even the Rosvi Kampbo has come to point and laugh at Leovigild, undoubtedly one of the most ineffective leaders we've seen in this game. The Osage have finally managed to break through and capture Kaoto, and are now preparing to surround and capture the former Floridian city of Fernandina. I don't have high hopes for Taino's chances of holding on to their Floridian gains now, as the number of Osage warriors has ballooned since the last slide. In the ruins of Kaoto, Ukrainian composer Mykola Leontovich leads a choir in honor of the Osage soldiers who died capturing the city. Leontovich is best known for composing the Carol of the Bells. For the Taino, those are alarm bells. If you'll excuse me for just one moment. Wagi! The goats! Anyway, a look at Wagi, South America shows us that Bolim, ever the warmonger, has built up a huge air and ground force in the area. No doubt a major cause for concern for Johan Moritz. For Wagi fans... Oh, just me? Huh. This is an exhilarating opportunity for Bolim to take out the number 5 Civ. And he needs to declare war on, if not New Holland, then someone else, because Wagi have recently dropped to number 3 in the PRs. If they don't do something soon, then New Holland could have a real chance of surpassing them, which would be an utter embarrassment for Bolim and for G. Blazeman. Please, Bolim, don't let Bora's death be in vain. It's much the same further north, but I'll note that while New Holland's core is sparse, their units are high-tech, and they've thus far proven far more deadly than their non-existent carpet would suggest. Meanwhile, the Wagi carpet consists mostly of paratroopers and rocket launchers, and they'll be taking a huge debuff to their strength due to their empire's bankruptcy. Also, I can't help but feel bad for those Zhang units trapped in Tiwanaku waters. Bolim, let those people go, you madman. Don't be fooled by the numerous DOWs. Not one of them is relevant. Instead, check out the much diminished holdings of Rome. There's been talk amongst the community of Pontus potentially making a play for Trajan's lands, but looking at this slide, I think that Pontus would have to sacrifice a significant portion of their military might if they wanted to make gains in the Mediterranean. But hey, that's better than doing nothing, and after their recent victory over the Sarmatians, it would make sense for Mithridates to continue pressing his advantage in the region, especially now that big players like Sierra Leone and the Seljuks are closing in around them. Trajan himself is not out of options yet, as Bavaria ever remains an enticing target, but for some reason the Roman leader just doesn't want the smoke. Perhaps a trip to a Cairo shisha bar would change his mind. A prudent play by Aguebana as he makes peace with the Osage, somehow managing to keep hold of both Fernandina and Kauto. For Osage fans, this is a disappointing turn of events, as it was really beginning to look like this war would be different from prior clashes between the two civilizations. But hey, there's always tomorrow. While the Taino may have survived this bout, it pretty much marks the end of their chances in the Battle Royale. The Osage were the last good target remaining to them, and now that Pahuska has proven himself to be the more dominant leader, there are 0 expansion opportunities left to the Blue-Green Island boys, barring a shock coalition. Maybe it'll happen? The Selkups have retaken Yekabpils, and additional units are moving to retake Jelgava. But if I was Vonya, I'd be looking to sue for peace soon. This war has been a slugfest for both belligerents, but the Selks are beginning to look pretty thin on the ground, and the Latvian counteroffensive may soon kick into action thanks to the timely addition of modern armor units to their arsenal. As Vonya continues to pump resources into this war, she leaves the rest of her empire vulnerable to an attack from Goguryeo. If that were to happen, she'd need all hands on deck to stand any chance of surviving with her prospects intact. On the other hand, Latvia's White Sea Fleet has been broken, and the chance for more gains may be too enticing for the Selkup leader to let slip through her grasp. It seems that, for now, the Karms get to hold on to their third chance at life, as Hajar continues to block Saba and Moog from getting at each other. 5 powers border the Karmatians' third iteration. The question is, who will be doing the smothering this time? My bet? Mithridates. Meanwhile, Bavaria denounces Wagi. "Shut up, Ludwig, you mid-ass power." Oh, sorry. Lost myself there. This could be a bad move for Bavaria, as the Faroes and Wagi seem to be allies, evidenced by the Wagi units in Faroese territory. Still, I admire Ludwig's gumption. A shiver runs down Aguebana's back as 4 declarations of war hit the screen. It seems that the Osage's former peace deal was just a facade, a chance to buy time while they assembled their goon squad. The Thule DOW is irrelevant, and I don't know if the Yellowknives will be able to reach the Caribbean. But none of that will save the Taino, as Johan Moritz, his hands still wet with the blood of Puni and Cornplanter, has also jumped on the bandwagon. This isn't going to be pretty. More civs jump on the Visigoth hate train, none of whom can actually reach the much-maligned rump state. Man, someone just end these guys already. Wagi, Pharaohs, Thomas. Get him, Thomas! Get him! One turn into the coalition against Taino, and they've already lost Ayiti and Kurukira to New Holland, while Tsemaka has fallen into the red. Taino are sending out naval units to counterattack at Chihuahua and Oaxaca, but they don't look to be having much success, and remember, this is their strongest front. Lord knows what's going on in North America. Up in the frigid wastes of North America, Shang and Yellowknife units block Thule from tearing a Visigoth Gatling gun to shreds. Further west, Ikko Ikki have filled up their new territory with a respectable carpet. Who knew that such a sandwiched power would still make admirable plays at this late stage of the game? They use their newfound lands as an opportunity to spread their religion to northern Canada, teaching Jodo Shinshu proverbs to a passing Yellowknife tank unit. From the Arctic wastes to sunny Madagascar now, where we see that Palawa and Mogadishu have made peace, meaning that Abu Bakr ibn Umar gained Zahran for free. Smooth moves from the Mogadishawi leader, and that's not the only cause for celebration, as the naval power is also next to complete the Manhattan Project. In terms of aesthetic and vibes, Mogadishu is one of my favorite civs, but one has to wonder what's next for the civ. They've effectively been locked out of African expansion by Ndongo and Sierra Leone, and they'd surely come up short if they attempted a war with Singapore. That leaves Noongar as their best avenue for potential gains. Now that's a war I'd love to see. Afro-Australia would be a sight for sore eyes. In the meantime, I hear Shangani is particularly pleasant this time of year. A look at Taino's North American holdings now, or holding, as Kauto has fallen to New Holland and Fernandina has been captured by the Osage. Worse still is the fact that every other Taino city on this slide is in the red, and it won't take much for Moritz Navy to start making them flip. It's worth noting that Yellowknives have been denied any gains in this war, a boon to both the Osage and New Holland, who should be looking for any way to inconvenience Akaicho's North American powerhouse. Also, let's take a second to reflect. The Osage spent most of this episode trying to take Kaoto, first from Seneca, then from Taino, and when they did finally manage to flip it, they immediately gave it back. Now New Holland has it, and I wouldn't recommend Pahuska try to take it from Moritz, lest he end up as another body on the New Holland leader's ever-growing pile. The wise Vonya chooses to ignore my advice and pushes into Jelgava using some of her own modern armor. As hard as Carlos Ulmanis has tried to keep the Selkirk horde at bay, events have steadily spiraled out of his control, and we must now face the fact that this war has been an unmitigated disaster for a Civ who just an episode ago looked to be in a strong position with a decent number of expansion opportunities. There is hope for Latvia, as the Selkups will struggle to push any further than the shores of the White Sea. Past that, they won't be able to draw on the strength of their sizable navy. But that's the only good news I've got for Ulmanis. Looking north, an assault on Latvia is probably the last good chance for expansion that the Ume Sami will get, before they are well and truly blocked in by the Faroes and Selkups. Will they capitalize? It's not looking promising. Against all the odds, the Taino have managed to recapture Aieti. However, that's the only bit of good news I've got for the beleaguered Civ, as New Holland pushes them off the continent by capturing Fort San Carlos, as well as Jemaca. The Taino have historically been fishermen, but now the net is shrinking fast around them. They are down to 5 cities, all in the red, and with fleets of New Holland ships bearing down on them. Only a last-minute peace deal can save them now. It seems that there's a lot of hate for Thule going around, as Ndongo DOW them, following the Selkups declaration on the slide prior to this one. The Ndongo-Sierra Leone land border looks to be surprisingly stacked in Nzinga's favor. A DOW in this direction would surely throw a wrench in Thomas's plans for African dominance. But that's only considering land units. Sierra Leone has major advantages in the sky and on the sea, and so a war would almost certainly end in disaster for Ndongo. For now, Africa is faced with its first era of peace in a good while. Uh-oh. Prime those F keys, folks. Taino have lost Yuma to the Osage, while New Holland have retaken Aieti and flipped Cubao and Siguanea, leaving Taino with a single city, Boriken. Aguebana's fleet has been eviscerated by New Holland's far superior units. Said units are now bearing down on the Taino's final city, as Moritz guns for a third killed this episode. It would be a Seabrix 4 record, and possibly a CBR record, though I'll leave that to the sub's scholars to let me know. I had completely forgotten about the Thule Arctic city of Torngat. But nobody will forget the films that were produced there, as the legendary Japanese director Akira Kurosawa arrives to create his magnum opus, Ran. It is the story of 3 Asian powers locked in a struggle to control the country they call home. Although I don't remember the original film containing so much lactic acid. It's fitting, really, that Thule have generated Kurosawa, because they ran from Ikko Ikki, had their will to live stolen by Goguryeo, and now their victory may only exist in dreams. Oh, and Osage DOW'd them. And with that, we say a despondent F for Taino, as Moritz beheads his 3rd leader of the episode. With this play, it's possible that New Holland will surpass the Yellowknives in the power rankings, cementing them as a true contender to the current hegemony of Wagi, Goguryeo, and the Faroe Isles. A lot of hopes rested on Taino's shoulders going into Seabrix 4. They were the latest Caribbean civ to tread the footsteps of the Mark II Buccaneers, whose legendary performance stands in the pantheon of CBR legend. Did they achieve that lofty goal? They did not. But unlike the Seneca, the Taino do have a clear moment of dominance to their name. Their wars against Florida, the first of which saw them nabbing Fort San Carlos, while the second saw them taking Gregor MacGregor out of the game with the capture of St. Augustine. That was some great work, but it was also the only meaningful war the Taino ever fought, barring, of course, that fateful one we just witnessed against New Holland. Taino did have chances. When Mexico was being torn limb from limb by New Holland and the Yellowknives, the Taino could have jumped into the fray. They historically had a far stronger military than Seneca. It should have been Taino getting that kill, not Moritz. But alas, Taino never grasped their chance to be Bucks 2.0. No, Aguebana was content to stretch his legs in the Caribbean, enjoying a cocktail on the beach, far removed from the struggle and strife that bevel most of the Cylinder's denizens. I hope that the Taino can find that halcyon land again. Until then, I'll say this. F. Taino. Meanwhile, the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed the Faroese DOW on Thule. Sorry, Akira. 7 samurai won't be enough to stop the fisherman fleet from breaking down the walls of Torngat. The Faroes weren't the only civ to DOW the Thule. Not content with reducing them to a couple of shitty Arctic enclaves, Ikko Ikki declares war on Thule, with Big Bro Goguryeo in tow. The question has now become, can Thule hang on for 6 more slides, or will they be the 4th elimination this episode? Well, looking at the minimap, we see that Torngat remains standing, and on this slide I think Thule have enough units defending Kanglinik to keep it safe for a moment. Therefore, I'd bet on Thule making it to episode 40, but I've been wrong before. Fun fact, while writing this part, I became convinced that Ume-Same nuclear submarines off the east coast of North America were actually Babylonian subs, and that some sort of crazy glitch was occurring. I had it in my write-up for 2 days. We have our explanation for why the Faroes have thus far struggled to make inroads against Torngat. Why, you ask? It's because of Wagi. It's always because of Wagi. If it was any other civ doing the killing, I'd feel a little irked that the Wagi are getting in the way of the action. But it's the Faroes killing Thule, and therefore this is another reason to squeeze my Bolim body pillow all the tighter. Nevertheless, it's only a matter of time before Faroese special forces show up to crash Javraganak's party. Bavaria has completed the Manhattan Project, making them like the 20th civ to do so. Is it just me, or do the leaders on the Cylinder seem unwilling to actually use any nukes this season? Perhaps Ludwig will be the first. Lord knows it's one of 2 cool things he could do, the other being an invasion of Latvia. Komaron looks extremely vulnerable right now, and Ulmanis' destroyer fleet wouldn't be able to flip it back, so I'm hoping Bavaria takes the initiative while they can. In the Pacific, we see the various fleets of Gogurt, Hawaii, Zhang, Marshall Islands, and the Wagi drone horde. Note the 200 defense Wagi city of Polgara. Something tells me it wouldn't stop Goguryeo. No! Stop this talk, G-Blaze men. Nothing can beat unit spam, haha. Nothing can beat unit spam. It's worth noting that the Zhang cities of Guangzhou and Changhua have allowed them to maintain a corridor across the Pacific. This may one day become a blessing if the chance to join a coalition against the Yellowknives or New Holland ever presents itself. King Shaybani celebrates as Bukhara completes the Manhattan Project, and we get a chance to look at their stringy empire, featuring the new addition of Bulgar. Nukes should dissuade the Dzungars from attempting an attack on Shaybani's lands, giving him a chance to plot his next war against Kazan. After that, well, the sky's the limit, as long as nobody sets it on fire. Red fucking alert! Bolim has built another wonder. It's the Forbidden Palace, which means that Wagi have plonked some points in patronage. Not the best move in a domination-only game with no city-states. I assume this means that Wagi have completed the rest of the policy tree, which renders their cultural wonders effectively useless. I'd say that production would have been better spent on troops, but that's Wagi's whole problem, isn't it? The negative 10% unhappiness from Forbidden Palace is alright, but what Bolim really needs is some money. I am also pictured here on the right side of the slide, smelling the flowers and ignoring the national deficit. This, my dear friends, is the way of the Wagi. As the episode draws to a close, I leave you with a shot of Australia, where Nungar and Palawa continue to throw gang signs at each other while circling the drain of their unspoken lesbian romance. A lot of ink has been spilled on which Australian power would come out ahead in a war, But at this point, I'd expect uncensored Yuri from the two powers before I'd expect a legitimate confrontation. The Noongar have enlisted Japanese singer Kyu Sakamoto to pen a tasteful hit diss song against the Palauans. In real life, Sakamoto is best known for his hit song Ue o Muite Aruko. With that, I bid you all farewell. The Indian Ocean still has some room for more Wagi units, and Emperor Bolim won't be content until it is a purple sea. I've been G. Blazeman, in the voice of Doc Ito. Thanks for listening.